it was late at night in England during the Industrial Revolution. At this time, most English towns needed people to work in the factories that were beginning to open all over the country. Many people came to the towns to find work. But they were often so poor that they could not buy enough to eat, and they had nowhere to sleep. So they went to the workhouses, where at least they had a bed and some sort of food. In one such workhouse, an old nurse and a doctor were working in a small, dark room, looking at a baby boy that had just been born. The baby found it difficult to breathe.
They did not know if he would live. What's the mother's name? The doctor asked the nurse.
I don't know. She arrived at the workhouse last night, said the nurse. She was ill and weak when she came. When the baby cried, the mother said weakly, "Can I see my new baby?" The nurse picked up the tiny boy, and the mother saw him for the first time. She kissed him gently on the cheek and smiled. Then the mother died. "Poor woman," said the nurse. "She was so beautiful. We'll never know who she was." The baby was called Oliver Twist.
He was sent to live with other orphans in an old house nearby.
The orphans were all the children of parents who had been destitute. A woman called Mrs. Mann was given a little money to look after the orphans. But she decided that she needed some of this money for herself. For this reason, the boys never had very much to eat. On his 9th birthday, Oliver was a small, weak child.
He had spent all his life in the old building. Mrs. Mann, who was no kinder to Oliver than she was to the other orphans. Oliver did not go to school, and he did not know the world outside.
One day, an important man called Mr. Bumble visited Mrs. Man.
Mr. Bumble was an official from the workhouse, where the older children from poor families were big enough to work for their food. Now, Oliver's 9, you don't need to look after him.
Mr. Bumble told Mrs. Man. He is old enough to work for us in the workhouse.
Oliver was not sad to leave Mrs. Man, but he was sad to leave his friends, and the only home he had ever known.
He felt wretched as the door to the house was closed behind him.